Welcome to chapter 5. We are making progress, guys. We're making progress to get to live the Bitcoin life. Okay, chapter 5. How problems lead to solutions. This is a big question, all right? So, essentially, whoever controls the volume of money in our country is an absolute master of all industry and commerce. When you realize that the entire system is very easily controlled one way or another by a few powerful men at the top, you will not have to be told how periods of inflation and depression originate. Clearly, monetary inflation and its effect on purchasing power is a big deal. Now, let's introduce the problem. Shall we? Monetary inflation. What does that even mean? It's the increase in the money supply within an economy. You may not care. It directly impacts the average person by reducing their purchasing power. The cycle of price inflation starts when there's additional money introduced into circulation. This, in turn, boosts the demand for goods and services, ultimately causing prices to go up. Nothing but up. As you can see in my chart, our purchasing power is declining over time as the currency in circulation goes up, aka they print the money. All right, that's the problem. That's one of the problems, if not the major problem. Let's imagine 3 friends. Let's understand this purchasing power decreasing a little bit deeper. Alex, Bob, and Charlie. They each have $1 in hand, and there's 1 bottle of water available for sale. The initial situation is simple. Those 3 folks with a total of $3 and 1 bottle of water in the middle of all of them. Now, suppose someone, let's say the local government, decides to give each friend an extra $1. Now, they collectively have $6, right? Right? Because of the extra $1. Y'all get it? Okay, all right. What would be the natural result of this? Well, the increased demand, fueled by the extra money added by the government, prompts them to offer more than the initial price for the water bottle. In the end, the bidding war causes the price of the water bottle to go up. The situation reflects a decline in their purchasing power. Even though they have more money, they can't buy as many bottles of water as they could before. This is showcasing the impact of monetary inflation on the value of their money. Right. This example illustrates how the friends' purchasing power was impacted by factors beyond their control, emphasizing the importance of understanding and questioning the systems that influence the value of our money. Hint, 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 the government. Now let's explore how this plays out in real life. All right. Now, quick example, real quick. Volunteers will be allocated a random amount of play money. This represents the money supply in a society. An auction will be held for a small prize. To win the auction, you would need to make the highest bid using your allocation of play money. More play money will then be added to the total supply. This represents an increase in the money supply in the economy by the government. A second auction will be held using the same process as before. Record the winning bid next to the money supply on the chart. The auction will then be repeated a 3rd time. It's just a little exercise. Y'all can play it whenever y'all want and see the effect of somebody adding more money when we didn't expect it. You get it? Okay? Then you got to ask questions at the end of the exercise. How did the increase in the money supply affect the winning bids? AKA the government, right? If you add the government to the mix, what happens? Giving free money to people. What is the relationship between the money supply and inflation? When new money is injected into the economy, what happens? Do you think the changing prices are temporary or permanent? Why? What other factors can affect the prices of goods and services? How do you think price changes affect people long term? These are real questions. You gotta really start questioning. You gotta ask yourself. But anyway, that's just a little exercise. Now, back to an actual real life exercise. Not like a little play. This is the impact of individuals. Okay? Imagine Jamie, he or she is a college student who lives in a small apartment, right? It's a he. He works part-time at the coffee shop to pay for his living expenses and tuition. As soon as he starts living independently like a grown man like he is, right? Jamie learns to manage his own ledger. Let's just call this a little piece of paper, a little notebook, as you can see on my screen, it's a little notebook, and it's allowed Jamie to really keep track of everything, right? As you should, if you listen to this. At the beginning of the year, Jamie budgets $10,000 for his living expenses, okay? For the whole year, right? He's budgeting, he's anticipating that, including rent, food, and other necessities, okay? Just for those who don't know what a ledger is, it's just a record of all of your transactions. Just a little notebook that just keep track of everything that you do, how much you spend, how much you earn, okay? And then the budget, right? It allows you to budget, right? It's when you make an estimate of the income and the expenditures, aka your income and how much you spend for a set period of time. That's what a budget is, for those who don't know. I know, y'all smart. I know that. These were Jamie's transactions for January, okay? Just the month of January. As you can see, there's a couple of transactions, okay? We're starting from $1,600 because he already had $1,600 in his bank account, okay? In December. That's a leftover, right? And then he starts rent. You got to pay rent, $800. You got to pay groceries. I'm sorry, yeah, $800. And then groceries are $100. That's way back then. Way back then, groceries was $100. Actually, maybe that's 2025 prices. I don't know. You tell me in the comments. All right. Part-time paycheck. You got a part-time job. It's $500. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Then you got to pay gas. $350. That's expensive. Anyways, it's just an example, guys. Textbooks are $150. Still with me? Still with me? All right. 12 months later, while having lunch, Jamie notices that his budget is not stretching as far as it used to. He realizes that the prices of goods and services he needs to have increased significantly over the past year. And he wonders why. Let's just say we're in 2026. That's the next year, okay? Then he sees this image in the newspaper and can't believe his eyes. Year over year change in price of ingredients of a McDonald's burger. Oh my gosh. That's a crazy increase, in case y'all don't know. It jacks up the price of the burger to the roof. The cost of each ingredient in the burger increased, leading to an overall decrease in Jamie's purchasing power. We're going to talk about purchasing power a lot, so stick with me. Jamie's disciplined use of a ledger, and I encourage every one of y'all to use a ledger in any shape or form. It could be an app, it could be anything. Just something that allows you to budget a lot, okay? What your expenses are based on your income. Basically, his discipline and his ledger, it's shown what his purchasing power was and how it diminished over time, okay? Jamie now knows that he needs to budget an additional $1,000 for the same basket of goods and services that he purchased last year, right? Same tomatoes, same everything, but you got to budget $1,000 more. He better make more money, right? This means that his purchasing power has decreased by $1,000, and he now has to spend more money to buy the same stuff at the grocery store, okay? Real quick, these were Jamie's cost of each item in the basket in the first year and the second year, okay? As well as the purchase, the percentage increase in price. So the rent went up 12%, groceries went up 15%, other stuff went up 5%, and the total year over year was 10% increase, right? Because it went up $1,000. It's a 10% increase. Okay. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, today's prices are 30.39 times higher than average prices in 1913. I wasn't even born. Meaning that a dollar today only buys about 3% of what a dollar bought back then. Now, imagine someone gave Jamie a time travel choice. Either option one, take $100 in 1913, or wait until 2024 to receive only $3. It's like choosing between a lavish shopping spree in the past or just a couple candy bars today, aka nothing. The difference is huge, right? Right? You get it. And he highlights how much value the dollar has lost over the years. You should understand that because this disincentivizes saving. It disencourages saving. It discourages savings. Okay? When you know your money is going to lose power over time, you just want to spend it all right now because at least you can spend the entire money. It's more advantageous to spend money now before its value decreases in over time. This hinders people's ability to plan for the future. There's no way you can buy a house in the future because you just might as well spend it right now because it's worth more. As shown in the graph, the salary growth year over year in the US has remained stagnant for the average citizen since around 1971. I'll let you go figure out what happened in 1971, right? Come back in the comments and drop a comment and let me know what you find. So basically, that means that most people aren't receiving raises at the same rate as their currency loses value, despite having to work harder, right? Because we work harder and harder, but we earn less, if not the same, year over year. The purchasing power of the US dollar has fallen sharply over the last century due to rising inflation and money supply. Okay, as you can see, that red curve is basically not going up, but going down, right? That's the price of $1. That's the purchasing power of $1. Clearly, it decreased, and we're in 2025 now. So I'll let you figure out what this is now, okay? Now, in their struggle to keep pace with increasing costs, many turn to credit. Y'all love these credit cards. I know. Which is like using a small plaster on on a very deep wound. Okay, so people take a loan. Y'all already know how those work, and make impulsive decisions just to get by. Fast money becomes a necessity, and individuals find themselves in a cycle where survival today takes precedence over planning for tomorrow. Tomorrow is dragging. Okay, the fiat system impacts humanity's psychology. Sorry, by instilling a high time preference, a focus on the short-term gains over a long-term planning. Okay, under a fiat system, that's what it incentivizes: high time preference. So certain groups get richer, but most individuals stay dependent on a system that makes them poorer and poorer. People around the world found themselves working more jobs and longer hours just to maintain the same standard of living. I know you know what I'm saying. So it's just like being on a treadmill, running faster and faster and faster, but you never getting ahead. You never getting ahead. Can't catch up. The fiat system leaves individuals feeling like they are in a perpetual race against rising prices. I know you know. This is an example that most Americans probably don't even know. But Zimbabwe is a country in Africa. They experienced what we call hyperinflation in the late 2000s. Okay. The country's economy was basically, that's what that means, hit by a combination of political instability, economic mismanagement, and external factors such as drought and sanctions. As a result, the value of the Zimbabwean dollar plummeted and the government was forced to print more money. Okay. Printing money is a disaster. You'll see that over time. If you don't get it from the Zimbabwean government, I don't know how you're going to get it. In 2008, the $100 trillion bill was introduced in Zimbabwe because hyperinflation, because of that, and that's basically when the money really loses its value so bad that it's worth nothing. Okay. And at that time, It was worth only a few US dollars at the time. Despite its high value, aka the number, right? $100 trillion. The bill was not enough to buy basic necessities, and people had to carry large bundles of cash to make everyday purchases. If you know, you know. In Venezuela, same thing. Poor economic policies and excessive money printing. Excessive money printing, you said? Caused the bolivar to hyperinflate, leading to widespread poverty, food shortages, and political instability. The 2008 financial crisis exemplified the failure of a fiat system. Irresponsible lending practices, lack of oversight, and excessive money creation led to a collapse in the housing market, massive job losses, and global economic turmoil. Y'all understand this? I know. Obviously, this is going to increase the wealth inequality, right? Right. In a society based on sound money like gold, a government's financial decision making is directly tied to the people's approval. You gotta understand that. In the fiat system, however, governments, guess what? They can go into an unlimited debt on the backs of its citizens. The power to print money is so great that it will often lead to political centralization. I wonder why. I wonder why. Why would it lead to political centralization? Right? The fiat system enables governments to accumulate massive debts, making decisions that benefit themselves rather than the majority, right? Superpowers like the United States gain an edge due to this phenomenon. They have something called a money printer. They can print money endlessly to fund their plans, including wars. If you don't know, now you know. This ability allows these dominant nations to control influence, okay, and engage in geopolitical conflicts. Wink, wink, wars, creating a global power imbalance. Wink, wink, other small countries or big countries like in Africa or South America or Asia. Wars and major actions to control others become financially feasible, doable for superpowers like the United States of America, while others, without the same financial flexibility, face limitations. Clearly, you can't print your own money. You have to depend on other people, on other countries to print your own money in your own sovereign country. Money printing, okay, essentially, it allows governments and their tight collaboration with central banks to inject more currency into the economy. The receivers of this newly created money are those with existing wealth and status, powerful entities and individuals. That's as simple as that. These groups benefit from the freshly printed money before its negative effects, like a decrease in purchasing power. Wink, wink, we just talked about this, right? Like you and I are affected by the decrease of purchasing power. It starts now to manifest itself through the economy. As you can see, the grocery carts, you can just buy less and less things. It's just that simple, okay? There's a crazy big wealth inequality that literally, okay, it's not about the haves or the have-nots. It's not about Republicans versus Democrats. It's about suppressing economic mobility. Those from less privileged backgrounds find it increasingly challenging to climb the economic ladder. Like you have to get credit cards on credit cards, hoping that you can make it. But you can't because you're borrowing more from your own future to pay for your present. Basically, you are engaging in a race with a heavy backpack. Like literally, that's a big handicap if you didn't get it yet. The growing gap between the rich and the poor causes problems for the majority, with the wealthy shaping policies in their favor. This makes things harder for regular people, leading to social unrest. We've seen it, a lack of trust in institutions and communities falling apart. We don't even trust each other. Okay? We don't even trust each other. The fiat system's instability manifests in economic uncertainty, political unrest, and the global repercussions when the Western world faces an economic downturn. This is a global phenomenon. Don't get it twisted. This is not a United States of America. It's an issue only. It's a global issue that's affecting societies left and right, developing nations, underdeveloped, don't matter. Okay? The wealthy really is operating on a transnational scale. Their money can move, okay, because they can use the global financial system to their advantage. They don't need to get on credit cards to get by, okay? Because they have this type of advantage over us, basically that widens the gap between the upper and lower classes. The debt becomes the norm for humanity. Credit cards are the normal thing, but they're not normal. I'm here to tell you, okay? It's a big issue here. Governments and institutions, basically worldwide, right? They find themselves in a sea of debt, right? Businesses, individuals, same thing. The psychological shift toward considering debt as acceptable has its roots in the fiat system's design. So, AKA, if you're struggling today, it is by design. We are using the wrong currency. But we'll talk about that soon. Basically, during the past decades, it's become easier and easier to take on substantial debt. Like it's easier to get a credit card, like let's be real, or a payday loan, right? Wherever you are. And it often becomes a necessity for ordinary people due to rising prices and living costs. It's just so simple that it kind of sounds stupid. We enter into something called consumerism. That means we just keep consuming stuff. We don't even need stuff. Like we buy Amazon stuff and we don't even need those things, right? We engage in a real constant urge to buy stuff. You know those things, hashtag TikTok maybe do it. All these stupidities, right? We buy stuff from China that's completely plastic stuff from China that makes no sense to buy because it's gonna break in a month, right? It leads us, we enter into a weird spiral because we basically purchase more than we need, right? We overconsume in waste. I mean, literal waste. That's what's in the cart right now on the screen. While it may seem like a never ending shopping spree, the real cost goes beyond the price tag because that's all we can see. That's all you and I can see, the price tag. But it's impacting us psychologically, okay? Because our health and our well being now gets impacted, whether you see it or not. I'm here to tell you. It becomes clear that the fiat system is not just an economic mechanism, but rather it's a system that shapes human society as a whole. As you can see on my screen, right? There's a big gap between the top image and the bottom image. Okay. Top image is showing really a big concentration of power. Okay. Big wealth disparities, as you can see, right? Societal norms are completely torn apart. The fiat system directly influences how nations operate and how regular citizens navigate their lives. I know you feel affected. I know you do. There's a global debt burden now because governments, they just keep drowning in debt. Okay, they've been caught in a dangerous game of accumulating more debt than they can ever pay back. We are at 37 point something trillion dollars. Do you even know what a trillion is? There's too many zeros for you and I to comprehend what that even means. Okay, it's a story of reckless spending. If our governments can spend recklessly, we sometimes get attached to that. And we have this thing where also it gets to us in our daily life because we start borrowing money that we don't really have and we cannot repay back. because we get taught by our daddy government to really do it just like they do it, except that we don't have the money printer. Okay, we don't have the money printer, so it automatically leads to a brink of financial disaster. And that's what this red whole thing looks like on my screen. Every little red little spigot thing, it's a country that's in debt, like in the crazy debt. Their debt is really so high compared to the income or whatever it's called for the government, right? They don't get income, they get taxes, right? They get paid taxes and all kinds of fees or whatever. And that ratio is just the red. Just think about it like they're in the red on their bank account, on their balance sheet, right? That's what we call the GDP ratio, right? Gross domestic product. I think that's what it stands for. The debt spiral, right? That's what we call the debt spiral, when you really keep getting into a snowball effect where you keep getting into more debt to pay the previous debt. I know you guys understand what this means, because some of us, we live through this. We know that we're doing it, but we think we ain't got no other way to get by but to get another credit card or another debt, right? But the catch 22 is that the debt just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we're not sure how to stop it, and we can't ask for help. The consequences mentioned earlier, from wealth inequality to societal unrest, won't fade away. Okay. Instead, the global debt burden has reached a point of no return. This is what we call an unsustainable path. Okay. We cannot go back to a positive balance sheet anymore. $37 trillion in debt. Trust me, in no way, if somebody is responsible for this, they don't even feel like paying for it. It's just like you have a bad credit card, or like college debt, right? College debt. Like, like at some point, it gets too high, right? You don't really feel like paying it back anyway. Even if you can break it down monthly, it just sounds so high. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what we're talking about here, right? As of today, the U.S. federal government has added over $10 trillion of new debt since 2019. I know that number is way higher than that. Total debt has skyrocketed from about $23 trillion during the fourth quarter of 2019 to an astronomical, let me just rephrase this, $37 trillion today. Let that sink in. The pace at which governments globally churn out new debt isn't slowing down. In fact, it's accelerating. Okay. Just get that. It's accelerating. It can't stop. That chart is literally not even trying to help you. Like, it's trying to help you, but it can't even do it any justice. The level of relative to other empires, like it's the level of global reserve currencies, like based on each nation's, like the debt is just unsustainable. Now, here comes the saviors, right? Remember, the theme of this chapter is how problems lead to solutions. So we're gonna get to it, right? But before we introduce the next chapter, let's reel it in smoothly, okay? So we observe the progressive capture of money by banks and governments throughout history, leading to the fiat system we know today and its disastrous consequences for society. But the rise of new technologies, right? YouTube, right? New technologies like encryption and the internet. It allowed for new ideas to emerge, such as independent digital money, free of government intervention, open and accessible to all. Emphasis on all. Exactly. There's a lot of people around the world that can't even open a bank account. Talk about financial inclusion, right? Let's dive into the journey of those leading this revolutionary movement. I introduced the Cipher Punks. And they don't look like that, but this Cipher Punks. Okay. Hal Finney said, the computer can be used as a tool to liberate and protect people rather than to control them. The second half of the 20th century saw the rise of multiple technologies, breakthroughs like the computer and the internet. I know y'all were probably not born yet. I don't know. Give me a comment. Throw a comment in the comment section. Let me know if you were born in the in the internet era. in the early internet, like early internet, paving the way for a new digital age. Like this was the early internet, guys. Like this was really early at the time. I was born, I remember that time, but I don't know if some of you remember that time, but that was crazy good. We were really like we were witnessing a big shift in the way we were doing so many different things. The internet, that was crazy. That was allowing us to do so many different things without even moving, without even going to the store. So it was fantastic for me when I was a young kid. But anyways, a group of people discovered that these massive innovations would soon transform how society functions, right? They foresaw, like they saw before the time, right? The potential and the danger, right? Of the personal computer, either as a freedom enabling tool to empower the individual, right? Or as a tool for complete control and surveillance, right? So they knew like the dichotomy between both things, like, you know, yin and yang type of stuff. These people were called the Cipher Punks, right? They had this vision. Okay, they were the visionaries of this new digital money that we're going to introduce you in the next chapter. Now, they emerged as a loosely connected group of activists. Nobody cared about them. They were cryptographers, programmers, and they were privacy activists who basically they shared the common vision. And what was that vision? The pursuit of privacy, security, and decentralized digital future. Man, that sounded crazy. I mean, I'm telling you, in the early 90s, I was not about that life. But hey, what did I even know? I was a young kid. The term cypherpunk is a fusion of cipher, referring to cryptographic code, and punk, basically, it means the countercultural ethos of rebellion, right? Like kind of like going against things, like like a fighter. The cypherpunks basically they believe in the power of cryptography, like digital cipher cryptography, right, to protect individual liberties. Like they believe that this could be possible. I mean, I was just a kid. I didn't know nothing about this, but hey, clearly it worked. But their goals initially was like they were trying to develop tools to secure online communication, like over the internet. They want to make sure you can like use like you can do internet activities with without really revealing all your personal information and stuff like that. And they believe that we could establish a digital currency to operate beyond the control of those centralized authorities, aka the banking system, right? Basically, the cypherpunks, they understood the consequences of the fiat system, and they saw the threat of what we call an Orwellian future, right? They believed that they had to ensure that the personal computer on the internet would become good things for humanity instead of like bad things, instead of this type of control that the state has over us, over the people. Like, the government has control over the citizens, as we can as we clearly learned earlier through the banking system, right? Through the fiat system. Now, let's just define what an Orwellian future is. I don't know if you've ever read that book called um, uh, The Animal Farm. The Animal Farm is a book by George Orwell, and this is where the term Orwellian future comes from. I really invite you to read that book. It's a great book. I read that book when I was young, and it really inspired me. And I'll be honest, maybe this is what kind of helped me buy Bitcoin when I was ready, because not everybody's ready. But an Orwellian future refers to a dystopian vision inspired by George Orwell's works in his book. The term is associated with a nightmarish and totalitarian society characterized by oppressive government control, extensive surveillance, propaganda. Whoa, I say the P word, and the manipulation of information. The term Orwellian often describes a scenario where citizens' freedoms and individual autonomy are severely restricted. Dissident is dissent is suppressed, and reality is distorted to serve the interests of a powerful and authoritarian regime. Now, the concept is named after George Orwell because in his writings he warned against the potential danger of unchecked government. Like you gotta keep your government's power in check. How do we do that, right? Because all we know And all we see, and we've seen that throughout history, there's a big erosion of fundamental human rights, right? I don't need to teach you that. Y'all already know. But the key figures within the cypherpunk movement, basically, there are some names that you kind of can keep in mind, right? Eric Hughes, Timothy C. May, and John Gilmore. Basically, in '92, man, I was so young. In 1992, Eric Hughes penned a cypherpunk manifesto. I really invite you to read that book, though. But the book basically outlined the groups, basically the whole cypherpunks principles as a whole. It emphasizes the importance of privacy, encryption, and the need for individuals to actually take control of their digital identities. This is so important, like you have no idea. One of the most notable inventions of the cypherpunks was the creation of cryptographic tools and protocol. I know it sounds like like gibberish to you, but you gotta like understand how powerful it really is, because you can speak in front of the White House, but we tried this many times and it doesn't seem like it changes anything. Because so basically in 1991, Phil Zimmerman, he introduced a different technology called PGP. And I'm a tech nerd, so I know what PGP is, but if you don't know, just Google it. But it's basically an email encryption software that became really a flagship project. But PGP, it kind of allowed users to really send encrypted messages over the internet without the ability for anyone to decrypt them except the intended recipient. So let's say I send you a message. Let's just say, right, right now we're using iMessages, but just think about it like iMessage, it really used a sort of encryption. Where if I send you an iMessage between my iPhone to your iPhone, you and we're the only ones that can see that message. That's what we call encryption. Okay. Before that, any message that was sent over the internet at the time in the early '90s, basically it could be intercepted by others like the government. You can imagine, right? Imagine you owe money, you owe money to the IRS, right? But you don't really want these messages to be intercepted by the IRS and just kind of remind you that you owe July's payment. Anyways, I digress. I digress. But the cypherpunks basically they thought that the breakthrough of encryption, right, along with the internet and the use of the computer, because that was the early time at the time, um, the early era of the computer. Basically, all that combination of those three things, it could provide a solid foundation for the creation of the decentralized networks in a digital space, right? That would allow all individuals around the world, right? So we can communicate and transact on the internet privately and without the interference from a central authority, right? You get it. I know you get it, right? So that's basically where we kind of were leaning towards the cypherpunks. They really were on the right track to foster like a different type of bright future for humanity, where they were thinking like technology could be like a tool. We could be using technology as a tool to actually maximize freedom instead of maximizing control, right? So the only missing pieces to that equation was a decentralized network and a digital currency. Boom, right? Now, before we dive into the decentralized system, let's just talk about centralized systems. We need to really emphasize this. This is the home stretch. So stick with me, right? What's a centralized system? Let's just review what that is, and then we'll talk about the decentralized real quick, and then we'll end for it. Okay. So centralized system, basically, that's basically when all the power is just centralized into one entity, and it leads to corruption, right? It can lead to mismanagement of resources. Like it includes right, financial resources. Imagine that somebody's hogging all the money, basically. That's what it boils down to, right? That's what centralized money means. We all using the same money, and it leads to centralization of that said money. Trust me, the money that we use today is really super centralized. And if you don't know, just do some research, you'll find out. But that's what it is, right? The modern fiat system is really based on this centralization of control, with a small group of banks and other financial institutions. They're basically holding the significant sway of the whole economy to themselves, right? We don't even get access to that type of money, right? That's what a centralized system. Just let me just give you a little analogy real quick, right? Basically, a centralized system. Think about this like a tree with a single trunk, right? Every little leaf, we got to rely on that little trunk, on that big trunk. Everything we want to do, we got to ask the big trunk. We got to rely on the trunk. If the trunk is messed up, all the leaves going to be messed up. That's what a centralized system is. There's a centralized point of control. There's a centralized point of control based on the centralized authority, right? Even if you're a branch, you think you're free, right? You think you're so free. You think you got money. You think you can do all these things, but you're still tied to the centralized branch, to the centralized trunk, right? And guess what? That tree is now vulnerable because everybody got to ask for that. So basically, the trunk, if the trunk is damaged or diseased, all the branches, it means nothing. Like we can't rely. We got to rely on that bad tree to get support. That's what it is, right? And now here are the drawbacks, right? Now we are all vulnerable, right? Now we are all vulnerable. The tree is basically anybody that is part of that tree. We long for control and power, right? That's basically what the trunk is. It kind of it's extracting all the power away from the leaves all the way back to the trunk. That's what the centralized system really kind of produce and induce, right? It kind of will also cause inefficiency, right? Because it's really inefficient, right? We got to rely on the trunk for everything that we do, right? We got to rely on it. We can't make decisions on our own. It costs more. It's slower, right? Imagine you got a branch on this side, got to talk to the other branch on the other side. Instead of just talking to each other directly, we got to come back to the trunk and then hit the other side of the branch, right? Then also another thing, and this is the last part, we lack autonomy, right? We are a little leaf. We cannot act on our own without going back to the trunk. But you get the point. You get the point, right? We are prone to heavy censorship. Needless to say, you get it, right? All our financial transaction can be blocked straight up from the trunk that make all the decisions for us financially, obviously, right? We cannot scale. We cannot move past a certain level, right? Because we always got to come back to the trunk. Everything comes back to the trunk. Now, because everything comes back to the trunk, we now face security risks. Literally, let the trunk go bad. All of us are messed up. Let the whole economy collapse. Watch what will happen, right? There's also a lack of transparency. And this is probably the baddest thing, right? There's no transparency, there's no trust because the trunk is more incentivized to make decisions for themselves, right? They basically they don't want to be trustworthy. It's better for them to make plans behind closed doors and we just are the little leaves over there. We just gotta follow the trunk. We just gotta follow the trunk. Don't ask no questions. Now, here is the good news. Here's the good news. Here's what the centralized system is really opposed to. And this is where the Cipher Punks really had the best vision for humanity. All right, stick with me. This is the home stretch all the way. A decentralized system, look at it like a forest. Basically, each tree, they represent an independent participant. You are a whole tree on your own, and you are part of a big forest. That's what symbolizes the entire system. As you can see in this image, in the green image, you can see, and it's a beautiful view too. You can see you are one of those trees. That means that you are more resilient than just, like you are more resilient than just being a leaf on a tree, right? You are a whole tree on your own. You don't have to rely on a single point of failure like we were doing when we were like a leaf, all part of the same trunk. Now we are our own tree. We are independent from the main tree. There's no such thing as a main tree anymore. So now we are more effective, right? Just like a forest, right? We basically are more diverse. There are big trees, small trees, don't matter. We can still collaborate and work together. We are incentivized to be collaborative participants. We incentivize to work together, right? This is a much better system to really participate in, right? Now, why is it such a better system? Because it enhances resilience and reliability because there's no single point of failure, right? There's an increased security because if one tree is bad, he can be bad on his own. It doesn't affect anybody else, right? There's no single point of hackers, right? There's no single point of honeypot, right, for attackers to really like hit all of us. Like if there's a bank that fails, right? If the whole banking system fail, that doesn't affect any of those trees. It's just one tree that fell. Does this make sense? Right. So basically, you are now a sovereign tree, right? You're a sovereign individual because you got control over your own money, over your own decisions. You can control the leaves. You can control everything that you do. You can control however you want to maneuver because you have control over your money. It's all about control, right? And you are, guess what? Because you got control over your money, you will be transparent, right? Because you'll be transparent. You don't need to hide anything. It doesn't matter whatever you do, it doesn't affect anybody else, right? Because you are a sovereign. You make moves for yourself. So you're more incentivized to actually help other trees, right? In this whole forest analogy, right? Because we all got the same information. We got the same information, right? The same money, basically, right? Same type of money, right? This is permissionless money in nature because you are a tree on your own. You don't need to ask for any type of permission to use your money, to earn money, to spend money, right? That allows any tree to also join the community, right? That's beautiful. Everybody wants to be a tree. Not everybody don't want to be part of the same trunk anymore, but everybody want to be an actual tree on their own because we're using a different money. Now, also, it enhances the privacy and security because now you don't have to try to spend so much money try to protect yourself. You don't have to spend so much money to try to protect your leaves. Everybody got the same leaves, right? Everybody operates pretty much with the same foundation. We all on the same ground. We all having the same information, right? We can influence the network, the whole forest, essentially, the same way. There's nobody that got special power. We all in the same forest. We're not just little leaves where we don't even have ground. You don't even have ground in the forest. You're just hanging in the air. You know what I'm saying? All right. So basically, because you now a whole tree and a whole sovereign tree, you now have equal opportunity, right? Because you are a node in the whole forest. You are a participant, right? And basically, node is just a term. It just means like it's a technical term on the computer world. It means it's a computer that can share information with other nodes in the network. Just keep that in mind. That's all. But you basically like a tree, right? And a tree, that's the node. And the forest, that's what we call the network, right? We working together, right? It's a group of nodes that are connected to each other. You see how we can be connected when we are individual trees, but when we are individual leaves, we are completely disconnected because we always got to come back to the trunk every single time. It's slower. It's not fast. All right. Now, in summary, right? Why decentralized systems, they have a whole lot of advantage, right? Making decisions together can be a little bit tricky. Let's just be real with this. This is very important because it requires everyone to work together, right? So basically, in the summary, in the world of centralized and decentralized systems, it's all about who holds the power. Centralized systems give power to a small group, while decentralized systems spread it out, letting everyone have a say. This shift in power would mean a fairer and more democratic future where many people influence the system that shapes their lives, right? Right. So one of the most pivotal concepts discussed by the Cipher Punks was something called digital cash. Now, the Cipher Punks, they realized that state and money, like the government and money, they needed to be separated, right? They need to be completely separate to ensure that the future would benefit the common good, right? David Charm was one of the Cipher Punks. He had a groundbreaking work on the cryptographic protocols. Basically, he wanted to secure and privatize transactions um, on the internet, right? But the downside of his technology and his protocol was that this protocol, his protocol required a central authority to function, right? It needed a central authority, like we saw with the trees, to function efficiently, right? So he needed a central trunk. Basically, that was raising concerns about a single point of failure, and as we talked about, a potential risk for censorship, right? Like, what if the trunk doesn't like the money going from the left side of the leaves to the right side of the leaves, for example, right? So in the years that followed, multiple cypherpunks attempted to do the same thing that Davy Charm did, and they tried to create a solution for the digital currency free from government control, right? So despite the numerous attempts made over the decades, basically their efforts as a whole, that really faced practical challenges and couldn't fully materialize in the real world. Now, the cypherpunks, they concluded that, okay, it was really not that easy to build something like this in a digital form of cash, something that was secure, scalable, and that had potential to become widely adopted, right? It was really not going to be really easy. Okay, so this is basically three different technologies that kind of paced the whole way for a new type of technology called Bitcoin, and we'll get into it in the next chapter. But essentially, you got to think about it like these cypherpunks, they really paved the way. All right, so basically, I know that the story takes a turn, but an individual learning from the lessons of the cypherpunks, it kind of elevated the concept of the decentralized digital currency to a new heights. All right. So in the next chapter, in the next following chapter, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we will dive right in and we'll basically explore everything about what the 40 years of this, all these work from all these cypherpunks, how they ultimately led to the creation of a functional system that we call Bitcoin. Thank you for joining. Bye bye. Take care, guys.